Come on, Launchpad. Let's get dangerous.
In 1991, Disney was a very different company than it is now. Today, we know Disney as arguably the world's biggest entertainment conglomerate with truly worldwide reach and an unmatched roster of properties and characters to use in its films, shows, parks, and merchandising. But in '91, Disney was only a few years removed from what many would argue was its darkest hour. A 1984 attempted hostile corporate takeover by Saul Steinberg, who wanted to split the company apart and essentially sell it for parts. Leading up to '84, Disney had lost the luster and prestige that once defined it, and had become financially vulnerable, like me. No money. The near takeover acted as a wake-up call, and the late '80s and early '90s were an attempt to rebuild the House of Mouse. But to those of us who were kids watching Disney cartoons, and more specifically a very special Disney cartoon that premiered in 1991 called Darkwing Duck, none of this company, peril, and fragility mumbo-jumbo was on our radars. Our biggest problem back then was probably if we had enough milk for a bowl of cereal. Also, I'm a milk first, cereal second kind of guy. Don't at me. We were too busy enjoying the legendary Disney afternoon lineup that started with The Adventures of the Gummy Bears, DuckTales, Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, Tailspin, and would grow to include Darkwing Duck, Goof Troop, Gargoyles, and Aladdin. Seriously, for most of us kids growing up in the early '90s, the Disney afternoon occupies a big soft spot of nostalgia, but also is definitely a key reason we didn't all drive our parents completely insane. And for those of you who still managed to drive your parents insane, kudos to you for finding the time. Within the iconic block, a very special hero emerged. Part Batman, part Flash Gordon, part James Bond, and all tail feather. Here's everything you didn't know about Darkwing Duck. Darkwing Duck premiered on the Disney Channel on March 31st, 1991, and new episodes aired until December of 1992. The show had 3 seasons. The first was 65 episodes, and the second and third were 13 each. The show had an interesting broadcast history, as it was distributed via a combination of the Disney Channel, syndication through aforementioned Disney Afternoon animation block, and then via ABC, which Disney would go on to acquire in 1995. Darkwing Duck was produced by Walt Disney Television Animation. Disney Television Animation was a relatively new division of Disney's business. It was officially formed in 1984 as part of the post-attempted takeover rebuild of the business under new CEO Michael Eisner and President Frank Wells. Disney Television Animation was a high personal priority for Eisner, who saw innovative, cost-effective TV shows for kids as a key way to grow Disney's stable of characters and business. This led quickly to the creation of The Adventures of the Gummy Bears and DuckTales. And as we'll see, without DuckTales, there would be no Darkwing Duck. DuckTales proved to be extremely popular. The adventures of a mix of classic Disney ducks as well as new characters created an anchor for a business that was still finding its footing. In 1991, when Darkwing Duck premiered, Disney was still seeing no net growth and had revenue declines of 23%. In layman's terms, Scrooge wouldn't exactly be able to swim in Disney's money bin at that time. So it made sense, given the times, to build on what was working. Darkwing Duck followed the adventures of Drake Mallard, aka Darkwing Duck, a Cape crime fighter whose fighting flourishes are matched only by his love of silly puns.
Sorry, but it's time to prune your wedding plans.
And long-ass introductions.
I am the terror that flaps in the night. It's that infernal duck.
His trusty sidekick is Launchpad McQuacks, the best, worst pilot in Duckburg carried over from DuckTales.
Don't want to spill any artificial additives on my lucky scarf.
Or so we thought. Darkwing Duck creator Tad Stones claims DuckTales and Darkwing Duck take place in 2 separate Duck universes. What? Exactly.
Do you realize what this means?
Stones explains all of this in a 2016 Hollywood Reporter interview where he says Launchpad in DuckTales was a shoddy pilot who always crashed, though in Darkwing Duck, he was a decent pilot, thus existing in 2 different universes. As a kid, I just assumed he hit his 100-hour flight time FAA requirement between shows and that's why he got better at flying. I guess I was wrong, or maybe it was you, Tad Stones, who created the series who was wrong. Probably not. Stones admittedly says in the article that he was not a fan of continuity. Either way, I guess more Launchpad is never a bad thing.
Every hero needs a sidekick.
Anyway, Darkwing is also often assisted by his adopted daughter, Gosling, a super witty and impulsive 9-year-old girl who always has the best intentions but often gets herself into trouble.
No one gets the drop on Duckle.
Gosling, what am I?
She also doesn't take from anyone.
No, I'm gonna have to sick my ants on you!
Ooh, like I'm scared.
There's also Honker, Gosling's best friend and neighbor. He serves as the brain of the crew and often helps DW and Launchpad solve cases they're having a hard time with.
Prehistoric footprints. This could get me an A on my science project.
Together, they fight a variety of quirky villains armed with silly schemes, but always come out on top. Now, upon rewatch, I realized that the villains all somewhat resemble villains from some of my favorite superheroes like Spider-Man and Batman. Megavolt was the Electro-type villain. Taurus Bulba reminded me of the Kingpin, criminal mastermind. The Liquidator was basically Hydro Man, but a dog. Bushroot was similar to Poison Ivy. And my favorite was Quackerjack, who reminded me a bit of the Joker and a little bit of Harley Quinn. This all makes even more sense since creator Tad Stones has said that he was a huge comic book fan. More specifically, he loved the Silver Age era. The show has the reliably zany and physics-defining antics that kids love. And is chock full of references in tons of iconic genres and movies for the adults who are watching too.
Christmas, Bach, Grub Bug.
Now when it comes to the genesis of the show and character, we got a chance to talk to Darkwing Duck creator Tad Stones ourselves. In the interview, Stones recalls Disney execs asking for a spy show featuring a James Bond-esque hero based on a DuckTales episode called 00 Duck, where Launchpad is a James Bond-like spy. At first, it was being sold as 00 Duck, but the James Bond franchise kinda owned the whole 00 rights. So they had to come up with a new name. Luckily, writer-producer Alan Burnett came up with Darkwing and Stones added the Duck, and voila, Darkwing Duck. For more on that story and more behind-the-scenes info on the Disney Afternoon, check out that article on SYFY WIRE.
Let's see if we can sell this epic to Disney. Maybe they'll make a TV series out of it.
Darkwing Duck also provides an opportunity to talk about the style and tone Disney was going for as it began to rebuild. You probably know that Disney's most famous duck is Donald, a duck who stands in pretty stark contrast to a character like Darkwing. Donald had been used before as a revamp vehicle for Disney, specifically as an animated TV character. For example, 1983's Donald Duck Presents used Donald as a framing device for the presentation of Disney's classic animated shorts on TV. But shows like Donald Duck Presents, while awesome for introducing a new generation to the Disney classics, could be said to be resting on Disney's laurels. Darkwing is special among the other Disney animated TV shows that were running around the same time for really trying to do something new, because DuckTales, Chip 'n Dale, Goof Troop, and New Adventures of Winnie the Pooh were all anchored by well-known pre-existing Disney characters with decades of history. Although, I do think it's worth pointing out, sometimes Darkwing seems a little like another classic animated duck, one that's way more at home under a water tower than Cinderella's castle. Check out these clips side by side and you tell me.
Say, fella, do you need a good duck actor? Woohoo!
And of course, here's some extra randomness to whet your beak for a watch or rewatch. I had to.
Yuck.
1. Why do some characters wear pants and others don't? Launchpad wears pants. Some of the villains wear pants. Why does no one else?
Well, I'd try to catch him off guard.
2. I gotta say, these ants are adorable. 3. This show shows a lot of love to the whole classic cartoon head lumps thing.
Nice shot.
4. Watch this show if you love the chance to hang out with a pair of enormous sentient germs.
Meet Blob and Ray. They're a couple of germs.
Darkwing Duck! Cloud of snow and he appears, the master of surprise.
The theme song for Darkwing Duck fits comfortably into the genre of tell us the show's premise and make it catchy. Let's have a look.
Here comes Darkwing Duck! Look out! When there's trouble, you call DW.
This isn't the only theme song with a shout out to DW.
Hey, DW!
I know, no connection, but still fun. Anyway, you gotta love the 90s synth slap bassline, right?
Darkwing Duck of mystery, champion of right.
I mean, Seinfeld did premiere 2 years before Darkwing Duck, so maybe they got inspired there. Who knows? The song was composed by Phil Giffen with lyrics by Steve Nelson and Thomas Sharp. The song was sung by Jeff Pichetto. Pichetto also sang the theme songs for DuckTales and Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers. Which not only makes Pichetto a legend, but also poses the question, which is the better theme out of all three, huh? I'm leaning towards Rescue Rangers.
I have only one response to this development.
The end credits version of the Darkwing Duck theme is worth mentioning only because that sexy sax groove. Darkwing Duck was created by the aforementioned Tad Stones, an animation writer, director, artist, and producer who worked at Disney for most of his career. He was there at the beginning of Disney television animation and worked on a lot of famous shows of the division's first 2 decades. Adventures of the Gummy Bears, Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, Aladdin, Buzz Lightyear of Star Command, and so much more. He also worked on The Fox and the Hound and also worked briefly as an Imagineer developing projects for the Epcot park. Now, okay, I've been to Epcot just once when I was 15. Wasn't a fan, but people rave about it. Should I go back? Let me know in the comments.
You are not going.
Ted Stones and Alan Zaslav co-directed every Darkwing Duck episode. Zaslav also directed episodes of DuckTales and Aladdin. There are 42 credited writers for Darkwing Duck on IMDb. As usual, for a large writing staff, the collective experience of the writers covers a lot of ground. Some are writers at the end of their career, some were just starting out and are very much still actively working, and for some, this was their only writing gig. The work of the writers touched almost all the major kids' TV of the Darkwing Duck era and beyond, whether it was Disney, the WB, or the DCAU. But here are a few specific peeps from the writing staff we actually want to mention. Peter Hastings was a story editor on Animaniacs. Katie Kutch and Cheryl Scarborough co-created the New Kids on the Block animated series, which I didn't even remember being a thing, but I guess I must have been watching Hammer Time?
Hammer Man! Hammer Man! Hammer!
Jim Magin also wrote the Goofy movie, which was a weirdly formative animated movie for a lot of kids in that era. And this kid's favorite Disney movie ever. Facts. Writer Stephen Hibbert also acted occasionally as the Gimp in Pulp Fiction and Tourist on Toilet in National Treasure. I can do it all. What a chameleon. Darkwing Duck has a pretty deep cast list. Where other shows often reuse voice talent for different roles, Darkwing didn't do much of that. There are 110 credited actors on IMDb for 91 episodes. While it may be unfair to say that reusing voice talent constitutes as cutting corners on other shows, because, let's be honest, being able to do different voices is a talent worth celebrating, actors doing only one voice on Darkwing seems consistent with Disney's tendency to invest a lot of human capital in their productions. It also speaks towards Disney's thoroughness in building franchises that last, rather than just cranking out quick cartoons just to sell toys. Although, Disney sells toys. Wait until Baby Yoda hits the open market. Like they need it. Darkwing was voiced by Jim Cummings.
Wherever there's an evildoer evil-doing, I'll be there.
Cummings is a veteran voice actor who's done lots of work for Disney as well as other cartoons. He was Cat on Cat Dog.
It's the most beautiful bottom I've ever seen!
And is probably best known for many iterations of Winnie the Pooh, including the most recent Christopher Robin movie.
What to do indeed.
Pooh?
Launchpad McQuack was voiced by Terrence McGovern.
I left my scarf at Hamburger Hippos!
McGovern did a lot of live-action character acting in his early career, including American Graffiti,
Cute. Very cute.
but moved into voice acting later. Kristen Cavanaugh voiced Gosling.
Oh boy, this is writing. What'll I put in next?
She voiced some truly iconic roles, including Dexter in Dexter's Lab,
The janitor has gone crazy and locked me in.
Chucky in Rugrats,
I made it! Look, I'm on top of the world!
and Babe the Pig.
This is ridiculous, Mom.
Katie Lee voiced Honker.
Chapter 3, Magnetism. See Chapter 14, Electromagnetism.
She's a working voice actor who has also contributed voices to Muppet Babies
Doggone it, I never could get that note right.
and Sailor Moon. Although the show boasts a lot of voice talent, it didn't have a ton who were super famous or who would go on to uber fame or particularly iconic roles. But there are still a few. That includes Rob Paulsen, who's played a zillion memorable characters including Pinky on Pinky and the Brain,
What are we gonna do tomorrow night?
and Raphael on the OG TMNT series.
I'll never talk.
You'd better, or else I'm gonna get sarcastic.
Neil Ross, who voiced the narrator in the Biff Tannen Museum scene in Back to the Future Part 2.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Biff Tannen Museum.
Tim Curry, who voiced the villain Taurus Bulba,
I think it's time we said goodbye to the warden.
is a legend from Rocky Horror,
I'm just a sweet transvestite.
as well as the original Pennywise.
Aren't you gonna say hello?
Phil Hartman voiced villain Paddywhack.
Time to taste a little misery.
He's an SNL icon and was a regular on The Simpsons.
Hi, I'm Troy McClure. You may remember me from such nature films as Earwigs, Ooh.
Speaking of The Simpsons, Dan Castellaneta, who voices Homer, obviously,
I think it's pretty obvious.
also voiced Megavolt on Darkwing Duck.
Once I have the city's metal, I'll melt it all down, and I'll make an even bigger electromagnet.
Pamela Adlon, who was only in her 20s when she lent her voice to Darkwing, would go on to voice Bobby on King of the Hill,
You left yourself open, Dad.
and of course become an iconic comedy actor and showrunner. And finally, Jack Burns wasn't just a voice actor. He wrote the script for the original Muppets movie. That's good to have on your resume. Now, there's been a lot of Darkwing Duck content and merch produced outside the main show. A video game was released in 1992 for the NES, which was then ported over onto the Game Boy in 1993. More recently, video game-wise, Darkwing has also appeared in the Disney Infinity series, but it's just a costume, even though it's still dope. You can also enjoy Darkwing's adventures in the pages of several comic book series. Disney has released one, there is one by Boom Studios, and one by Joe Books. Oh man, that Boom Dark Knight inspired cover is so dope. Now we can't often say this about the characters on shows featured on EYDK, but it's also very possible to meet Darkwing Duck in real life. The character appears ever so often for meet and greets at various Disney theme parks. Just don't knock over any small children as you run up to them to get a selfie, which sounds like something I would do.
I am the terror that flaps in the air.
Darkwing has also appeared on TV outside his titular show, including on the Disney shows Bonkers,
Bunker Steve Bobcat.
and the 1994 Aladdin cartoon series.
Let's get dangerous.
But the most important TV return of Darkwing has to be in the 2017 DuckTales reboot.
I am Darkwing Duck. Playtime's over.
And I gotta get a shorter intro.
Which includes Darkwing as a full-blown recurring character. So does that mean now they're in the same universe?
Perhaps if you begin at the beginning.
Now if you can't get to Disney World anytime soon to try and shake hands with UW, Playmates released a 1991 action figure series of characters from the show, which are these bad boys. So not only was it action figures, but they also included vehicles as well as Darkwing gas gun, which I never got because my parents thought my grades weren't up to snuff. Besides, the characters at Disney World are just people with hangovers, overheating, in those hot-ass costumes. Oh, what if the kids are watching? Just kidding. Those characters are real. Live your dreams. Keep the magic alive. You're better than that.
Why, thank you for being so understanding.
As we wrap up, let's take a moment to appreciate the difference between where Disney television was when Darkwing Duck premiered and where it is now. In 1991, Disney was still finding its lane on TV. Today, they're the biggest entertainment juggernaut on Earth and have an asteroid-sized impact on the world of streaming as they debuted Disney Plus this past year. Back in the 90s, Disney shows were cheaper and lo-fi offerings relative to what Disney's film studios were putting out. Today, the boundary is a lot blurrier. Disney spent approximately $120 million on the production of The Mandalorian, and its forthcoming Monsters, Inc. show features the same big names as the films. I love me some Billy Crystal. No?
I can't believe it.
In other words, in the time of Darkwing Duck, Disney was trying to find its footing. And today, Disney's basically the ground around which everyone else is trying to get a foothold. But that doesn't mean that the era of Darkwing Duck is any less special. Because kids bring their imagination 100% to something, whether it costs 9 figures, or 6, or 0. The kids growing up watching The Mandalorian will have great memories of an expensive show, just as some of us have great memories of a more modestly budgeted Cape Duck. But the memories themselves are priceless.
That's kind of cute.
For anyone who wants to check out Darkwing Duck, the old and the new live together in perfect harmony on Disney Plus, where you can check out all the episodes. What are your fondest memories of Darkwing Duck? Are you over the fact that Launchpad exists in 2 different universes? Because that hit me hard. Let us know in the comments.
Amazing, fabulous, not bad at all.
Broke it already. For more everything you know, make sure you click over here. And for new episodes that premiere every other week, subscribe over here. Damn it. No wonder my parents never bought me toys.